Hello, my name is Jonathan. I'm making a video for the No Depression for Me.com. I'm a current writer and editor for the No Depression for Me.com website. That is where we are able to help build a community of people dealing with mental health, depression, anxiety, stuff like that, and helping to resolve these type of issues and be able to provide solutions and methods of being able to cure them through our online community and through different participants such as you guys who are able to fulfill those needs and fulfill our needs essentially, that we can come together as a community of people and talk about these type of things that aren't being talked about and help spread awareness, help spread positivity and different ways of really communicating aspects of life such as mental health that are really not taken too seriously, and if anything are kind of being normalized by today's standards, today's society, just to be perceived as a normal thing, but isn't really being taken too seriously in terms of being accountable for and being holding people accountable for actually solving or treating these mental health issues effectively anyway. And so our community of people was able to kind of help people through those struggles without the need of therapy, without the need of medication, just signing up for a free community people online and being able to help spread a positive message that you can overcome mental health and that you're able to find a community of people to chat with and connect with, and being able to formulate a bond and a sense of well-being and security through our website, through our page. Just signing up now and receiving a free ebook that we do have on our website of how to cure chronic depression, and also just being able to find some good friends to hang out with, find communion with, and true and be able to kind of truly connect over those type of issues as well, which is also something that not many people have access to or the privilege of being able to do. And so yeah, this is all free. This is all available now through signing up now on our webpage. We plan on updating the website obviously with a lot more content, with a lot of more blogs and forums. But for now, we have these videos here that I'm able to help make. We also have our Instagram page and our TikTok page that have various different types of content on that, so you wouldn't want to miss that. So I highly recommend you guys check out those contents. But as for today's topic is going to be about mental health in men. I feel as though I have a specific kind of connection with this topic and just a feel for wanting to talk about this. And a YouTuber that I do regularly subscribe to and watch his content, and I was feeling very motivated to make the video because of him, and just because a lot of the things he was resonating with me in terms of what he was saying in that video. And the video topic was really just that it's okay to cry. He was more like speaking on the spiritual side of things. I want to get into more the psychology as well as with that. But is it okay for men to cry? Is it okay for men to express those type of emotions in that sort of way? Is that really a healthy thing? And we're going to be talking about that today, because I kind of feel like there's some sort of division when it comes to men expressing themselves and, well, an overgeneralization of men expressing themselves. Really how we do it. What way are we expressing ourselves? And this is no different from how the average female would express themselves. To where I would argue that, okay, if you're doing it in public, you have to be very cautious of how you're doing that. You have to be very cautious on how you're expressing your emotions and how others will perceive you for doing that, because you have to keep in mind that people are always going to judge you. People are always going to have pre-assumptions, and so it's a very important thing to kind of have self-control over those emotions. And for even the average man, you don't know. not saying that's a bad thing, but some men can be overly emotional and can kind of have a fit of rage whenever they feel like they're angry, or even like start to tear up and feel like, very self-conscious, or very um, hateful towards themselves, or very antagonistic towards who they are. And some men get easily stressed out. When we talk about men, specifically with these kind of mental health issues, men can have certain depressions or certain anxieties that cause men to want to cry more. At the same time, it's fine if if you have those type of emotions. But I think the really main thing is that it starts to become very unhealthy when you start to do it too much. When it becomes apparent that, yeah, this isn't normal, this is something that is obviously being influenced and caused by a certain disorder, a certain mental health issue, a certain anxiety that's being portrayed and whatnot. And that's normal. I mean, a lot of people have certain fears or certain things that causes them stress, like, work or school. And sometimes you need that release. And I think in general, it's a lot better for anyone really to have that form of release, as opposed to, maybe drinking or maybe watching inappropriate content on the internet. Because for one, they don't have side effects. So you're not going to be more antisocial, you're not going to be more aggressive, as opposed to, drinking or smoking cannabis, or even like looking at inappropriate content to where you feel like more self-conscious, more anxious, less motivated, less energetic, which are all very common symptoms of doing these type of things, which obviously aren't good for us. So in that essence, I would actually recommend crying as an alternative for a lot of people, but also, meditating and praying, all those type of things are very beneficial, obviously, as well. But we do have to remember that, again, they're alternatives, right? So as opposed to the obvious two that can get you high, or the other aspect which can actually lower your energy, and you're actually lower your motivation, and increase like depression and other mental health issues. Those are all things that you want to stay far away from. And so in essence, men crying is actually a very beneficial thing for us to do, to be able to release a lot of emotions, a lot of stress mainly, which is the main factor. I would honestly recommend that majority of men would find relief in doing that, because it can actually help with a lot of mental health issues as well, as opposed to a man who is overly, perhaps, overly protective, which is another form of effeminate concept, actually, now that I think about that, as opposed to someone like a man who doesn't express their emotions often, who's very restrictive, very generalized, and that's fine if that's part of your personality. I don't have a problem with a man that doesn't um, express those kind of intimate emotions. If you have a naturally strong personality type, which even women can have that too. A lot of women can be very reserved and very strong, and have those type of leadership roles where they're not able to express and able to express themselves in those type of feminine ways. That's perfectly fine and it's acceptable, because at the end of the day, we each have different levels of how we are able to express ourselves. We each have different ways of communicating our needs, and some people respond to different emotions, and some do different recreational activities. So some things that could help us are exercising, for example. Some people can work out and feel relief from that. Some people may feel relief from crying. Some people may feel relief from negative aspects such as, punching a bag or something like that, or getting aggressive. And, some people, there's positive and negative ways of dealing with emotion. I don't subscribe to the whole toxic masculinity concept, because masculinity is what defines our culture. And without masculinity, we have no culture whatsoever. Just completely deprived and completely demoralized society that we live in. Obviously, you have more aggressive traits, which wouldn't even really be masculine. They would actually be more feminine, because of the fact that women tend to be more emotional than men. So actually, in a way, a man wanting to punch something or punch a wall is really embodying the type of female emotions or feminine emotions that a woman would have, but more in a more masculine way, if that makes sense. An emotional feeling drew a masculine ability, which is having strength, being more dominant in that area. And when we really recognize what crying really is, it's more of a female or feminine aspect of handling situations. And so really crying in itself is not the problem at all. It's really just how we go about expressing it, because at the end of the day, whether a male or female wants to express their emotions in a masculine or feminine way, really it just comes down to how healthy is it, like how effective is it at actually treating the problem. It's not so bad of a man to want to do that, especially if a man happens to be more emotional and overall just have more, feminine emotions. The problem is that when a man is overly emotional, when a man is not simply not a man, but is someone that is too much like portraying like a woman, and so a man can't be too emotional, but a man can't be too masculine either, because if you have too much of masculinity that you're not willing to express yourself, then it's going to come out somehow in how you release stress, right? Because you have to release stress, you have to be able to do it in some sort of way. And certainly drinking alcohol or smoking or watching inappropriate content isn't going to be helpful for anyone. How we release our emotions is how mature we really are at the end of the day, of how we're able to have self-control over ourselves. Too much of an emotional man can lead to, obviously, a man not being able to have any self-control, but rather just doing what he pleases to do, and how he responds to certain situations. He just does whatever he wants to do. And so having too much emotion is never a good thing, but having too little emotion is also a bad thing. And I kind of feel as though there's too much of a toxic masculinity in today's society, but there's also too much of emasculation of men in today's society as well. I wouldn't recommend crying in public per se. However, I wouldn't mind crying if it meant that, you were dealing with the loss of someone. If you are mourning someone from death, actually having, some sort of validation for it. Like if you're crying over someone dying, or you're crying because someone you love dearly is sick or is injured, or even you're injured yourself, I mean, that's a perfectly reasonable explanation to cry in public. Now, as opposed to being stressed out and just dealing with the normal struggles of tendencies of everyday life, and this is just a very personal thing, but every man and every female is going to have their way of expressing stress throughout the workplace, throughout their careers, and through school. We all have stress, and we all have ways of releasing them. And for me personally, I found crying is something that can be very helpful for me. I just happen to be someone that I would say, I have some feminine emotions in some cases, but I also have a lot of masculine stuff in some other areas, because I am a man. So I do have, I do have strength to be able to overcome some things. Though I would argue that's not by my own accord, but we can get into that topic another time. I do need ways of releasing energy. I do need ways of overcoming certain situations. And so for me, I do that just by simply, by praying or by meditating or even crying. Those things I typically do in private situations, only because of the fact that when we cry too much, and when we cry, and when we do these type of things, when we sort of have a dependence on them, we're not able to really build our self-esteem, and we're not really able to be mature and to be able to focus on actually fixing our problems in life. When we become too complacent with these type of methods for comforting us and for ultimately making our lives easier, we're not building strength from that. We have to sort of build strength from going through the difficult times and the problems that we're faced with in society. And that's another problem that I can really get into in another video, is that many people in general aren't willing to go through the trials and tribulations that life has to bring it. That's why you see many people in Gen Z especially quitting their jobs or quitting doing certain things that they find very, very difficult or very challenging. It's because we have such a complacent culture that's built around making people's lives comfortable, as opposed to actually building men and women that can actually fight, that has strength to really overcome a lot of personal issues that really can only be solved through the grind and tediousness that life has to offer it. And it's not to say that they're a bad thing either. It's to help us become more stronger individuals so that we can be more resilient, more persistent, more perseverant in life, and be able to kind of become stronger individuals, to be able to build our character, build our hope, and to build patience in us. And that's something that society has destroyed in a lot of people, because a lot of people's self-esteem is down, and you wonder why. It's because people aren't putting in the effort to become, actually important figures and becoming, their biggest support models in their lives, but they're rather using other people, using other figures to kind of embrace what they want to be like, instead of trying to achieve it themselves. And so, and of course, we can't do it all on our own means. Yes, obviously, we need physical support, we need emotional support, we need to have shelter, food, and all these different types of things. But that's just the basic premises of life. And I know this is more of a secondary role. It's in terms of fundamental needs and importance in that area. But a man's physical and mental well-being is just as important. And we should be really working towards ourselves to build our self-esteem, building our confidence in ourselves by going through a lot of the social and emotional traumas and pains that we're going through. And not to say that all emotional and social pains, emotional traumas that we go to are good, but they can be used for good to help us embody our true selves and what our true meaning and purpose is on this earth, as well as helping us to overcome many different things in our own lives and in other people's lives that have gone through similar things as well. And so we're really meant to be able to be role models for other people at the end of the day. And when we're not doing that, we're kind of devaluing ourselves, just kind of demoralizing ourselves and just focusing more on our own needs, and just just sadly being selfish towards ourselves, just blatantly being selfish and not taking care of ourselves like we should, and not holding ourselves accountable to what we're actually going through. And so this is a much deeper issue, I know, obviously, than just men crying. But I will just say this, I will leave it on this, that men crying in public is not a good thing to do. But if you are going to use crying as a coping mechanism, please make sure that not only is it not in front of everybody, like in a public situation, but that you're able to actually have that self-control to contain yourself from wanting to cry. You shouldn't be on the floor during your job or during school. School may be a little bit more maybe a little more acceptable because of the fact that you're not being paid to go to school. Well, they're not paying you to go to school. You're paying to go to school. So obviously it's been more acceptable in that regard. You can obviously, choose to leave the class if you have those type of concerns, and you can obviously deal with those situations there. So you're not wasting company time or anything like that. However, you shouldn't be in the middle of class crying either. That's not a good thing to do. You shouldn't be, balled up in the middle of the road or on the sidewalk just crying to yourself, unless you have a very good reason of doing that. And in terms of private reasons, it's perfectly fine to do that, but I would only recommend about once or twice a day, if that, because really, no man or woman should be crying every day unless, again, you have a very good reason for doing that. And if it becomes something that becomes like a monthly thing where it happens over 6 months or even longer than that, then you have a serious problem, and it can be more likely be the depression that could be setting in your life, and that could be and that leads to a lot of more serious mental health issues than just the fact that you're crying all the time. We all have stressors in our lives. We all have different things that, I'm not even gonna lie, I've had different things in my life that made me just want to quit life, just like any other person has. And to be honest with you, we all go through those days where they're very hard days, and I can be very emotional of a person. I'm very empathetic, I like to really care. I'm a very caring person, I like to really help people, which is why, I joined this internship in the first place, was because I really resonated with the message, and I really wanted to show my support and enthusiasm for being able to kind of relay my own mental health struggles, and just be able to help other people to really be able to solve them and be able to overcome them. So that's what I'll leave you guys with for this video. I'll see you all guys in the next video. God bless you all.